are joining us for the first time today, we'd like to share that MIT ID has emerged to be one of the best design institutes in India. In 2026, MIT Institute of Design will be celebrating 20 years of being a pioneering player in design education. The futurist journey began with one thought of the founder, which led to educating and impacting thousands in multiple design disciplines and naturally progressing into innovation. MIT ID's latest contribution to strengthening the global innovation ecosystem is the one-year flagship innovation program, which focuses on the four pillars of design, business, technology, and humanities. The key features and differentiators of this one-year course are a hands-on, highly customized, pro-practical, project-heavy based learning, deep emotions, and humanities. As promised, our open online courses focusing on innovation essentials have been launched this quarter. The duration of these certificate courses will range from 1 month to 9 months, in addition to our full-time one-year campus-based course. Do visit our website for more details. Moving on to today's session, we now welcome our guest speakers, innovation practitioners across 3 continents, Mr. Nilesh Sahasrabudhe, founder of Nordic Mojo, Prana Mojo, Mr. Thomas Mechtoft, associate professor at UMIA University, Mr. Nikhil Joshi, vice president and head, experience and intelligence practice at NTT Data. About Mr. Nilesh Sahasrabudhe, who's the former VP country manager at Tieto. He's a fast-paced business entrepreneur, adept at scaling up technology startups. He has deep experience and passion in setting up global technology centers, driving digital transformation, establishing new competencies, creating working culture fostering innovation, learnability, respect, trust, and happiness. Skilled in meeting emerging technology trends, developing innovative solutions, and introducing change to organizational procedures. He has strength in building, leading, and mentoring cross-functional teams. During his career journey, he has got an opportunity to work with super talented and humble people from CIRAC, Canbay, and Tieto across the globe, keeping promises, winning customer trust, and enjoying the work. The journey continues with Nordic Mojo and Prana Mojo Ventures. He is a steering member of CII, various academia and societal engagements, and mentor for CII ZIP Startup Program. About Mr. Thomas Mechtoft, he's an associate professor of media technology, appointed excellent teacher at UMIA University, and since 2011 acting as the director of the highly rated integrated 5-year Master of Science program in interaction design, technology and design at UMIA University. He holds dual MSc degrees in engineering physics and business from UMIA University and a PhD in media technology from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm. He's a recipient of the Faculty of Science and Technology's Pedagogical Prize for his efforts to inspire students and teachers to take part in creative, high-quality education. His research and teaching interests include not only media technology, interaction design, and students' learning, but also value creation, concurrent sourcing, marketing issues, and technological changes connected to the media and the media industry. His work has been widely published and has been presented at numerous international conferences within different areas, including the Best Paper Awards at the ANSMAC and CHI conferences. Next, about our guest panelist, Mr. Nikhil Joshi, who's the Vice President and Head of Experience and Intelligence Practice at NTT Data. He is an accomplished senior technology executive, enabling digital transformation to drive immediate business outcomes for enterprises while preparing for the future. A seasoned global leader with successful complex business transformation, M&A-related integration, and project implementation experience. Alumnus of Visvesvaraya National Institute of Technology, GIES College of Business at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, Northwestern University, former practice leader at Capgemini, currently serving as president, vice president, and head experience and intelligence practice at Entity Data, and celebrating 25 years of his glittering career this year. Our esteemed panel members will be in conversation with Associate Professor Harshit Desai, Director at MIT ID Innovation, an industry professional who has spent a decade plus in the higher education domain. He is a faculty at MIT ID and is currently pursuing his PhD. He is deeply immersed in building India's foremost innovation education practice in collaboration with fellow industry leaders. This curated series will feature a variety of industry thought leaders who are now a part of the global MIT ID innovation ecosystem. Team MIT ID Innovation and I, Priya Dhawan, Head of Collaborations and Communications Strategy, welcome you all once again to this thoughtfully curated innovation journey. Please do read the chat for other important pointers shared. Warm welcome once again, everyone. Over to you, Professor Desai.
Thank you, Priya ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful introduction and setting the stage for all of us to have a very, very interesting conversation. Thank you, Nilesh sir. Thank you, Thomas sir. And thank you, Nikhil, for joining in today. And I welcome you on behalf of, again, MIT ID Innovation. Getting straight into the topic, I think what I really want to bring up and bring to the fore is this whole importance of the broader term of digital transformation, but within that, the different layers and flavors that we all are here to discuss. And this was the very conversation that me and Nilesh sir were having for past few months. And as we just discovered that we are probably starting this initiative in the midst of the pandemic. So we invented a new term called COVID natives, and this is how we have the entire flavor and the substrate on which the whole initiative is built seems to be digital, because we all are working across time zones, across different geographies, and still work is happening at times far more efficiently. So I think that's what I would like to reiterate, that we acknowledge the importance of all things digital, and hence under the umbrella of MIT ID Innovation, there is a need felt to have a proper structured training and the right courses in this space. And because as we understand that it's a very broad term, we have to focus on specific aspects and specific modules, which again Nilesh sir and the larger team has been able to curate for us. So to begin with, sir, if you could just help us simplify this thing, because that's something which everybody talks about, and it's been there for a long time in all the conversations. But according to you, what does really digital transformation mean? And according to you, how do you see the importance of digital transformation in coming times?
Thank you, Ashit. Thank you, Thomas and Nikhil. I think we can see that we are covering quite a lot of time zones now. So it is good afternoon, good evening, as well as very good morning to Nikhil actually in US. So and I think this is possible, and one of the way simply we can put excellent example also of how the digital technologies is driving the business in the different territory. But to start giving the answer, because it's quite widely discussed topic, and I will say that, and I have been saying that the default is digital. So I have not seen actually the analog world since the time I started working in IT industry. So we always have been used to the digital world, and I think just now the concept what we have invented 5 minutes back, the time I've left Tieto or my earlier organization and formed Nordic Mojo as well as the well-being platform Prana Mojo, is we are COVID natives also. So we are in a way totally into the digital world. But I think digital transformation is simply putting all the digital technologies, not naming all of them because those have been growing at rapid speed and the new names have been popping up almost every day. But using those digital technologies to see that how the greater value can be provided to the customer. And it doesn't restrict to just, I will say, the customer, but what I have seen is the successful digital transformations are having a more sustainable and greater impact on individuals, businesses, as well as the societies. And those are the organizations, or those are the businesses which are able to actually provide a real value across the value chain of the organizations, of the individual and society. So there is a greater purpose to solving something bigger than just, I will say, making a profit. Because I think when you see every big, large organization, I think obviously making profit is something which is ultimate target. But considering other aspects of how does this impact on the society, how does this impact on the business, and how does it impact on the individual positively, actually, if all these three dimensions, if your digital transformation journey is taken care of, then actually the success rate and the sustainability of your solutions is much, much higher. I think you also posed a question. We are from India, and I purposely take examples considering this territory. So there are many examples, right from, we can talk about the Aadhaar implementation, or we can talk about the how the mobile payment gateway has been evolving in India. And I think during this 2019 and 20, the whole mobile payment gateway implementation has crossed the cash transactions in India for the first time. And that is an enormous impact of what digital technologies can do, because India has been primarily, till almost 70 years, was a cash transaction based economy. And for the first time since 2019 and 2020, because of the COVID also, we have seen that the number of transactions, as well as the volume and the amount which is moving using the mobile payment platforms, is actually much more than the cash transactions. And this is an excellent example where the businesses is also playing their role, like this all payment gateways when it comes to transferring the money. Then there are individuals, right from your mate till your, I think anyone for that matter, use that payment gateway. And I think the whole three are getting benefited. And this is an excellent example when it comes to what kind of a value digital transformation can bring. And now soon we are moving also, and I have been saying that we are the ones who are moving into more, I will say, cardless society also, because we are also skipping the cards. Almost everyone is having a mobile phone, and fantastic example of digital transformation. There are many things which are possible, but I think what drives this also, I will just tee off that also, and then we can move on to Thomas as well as to Nikhil. But what drives digital transformation is underlying is data. So we will be talking quite a lot about data. Then a lot of business models are changing from to the outcome based business models. And I think that's also very important. And ultimately the whole thing, what drives the transformation is actually customer experiences, and what is the value which gets created for the customer experience. So I think that's what I can summarize.
Thanks for opening it up, and that takes me straight to Professor Thomas, because I've heard this in some other context where they were saying that digital transformation is not so much about technology, but it's about business. So, and it has a straight impact on how new business models are evolved, and how do I really create those new models to explore these possibilities that the digital technologies have opened up. So how do you see that whole business model innovation piece? Because we know of, say, product innovation, or we know of the technology led innovation, but what is the story about business model innovation, if you may help us understand?
Thank you very much for the question. I mean, the last year has been really trying times for a lot of us, and especially for the ones owning businesses. And I think that this has shown that the digital transformation has become increasingly important to cope with not only the past-faced competitive environment that we've been around for so long now, but also the sudden changes that might move your customers to a totally different place. So I strongly believe that analyzing your business, no matter if it's just an idea, a minimum viable product, or you just have your current product or services that you need to revamp, utilizing some kind of building blocks are the foundation for creating a business model. So in other words, I mean, you should work with understanding what is, or actually you should work with understanding what the real value of your service is. What do the customers actually, what do they want? And understand how it actually affects your customers, your users, and how you can use the users to understand how to satisfy their needs. And in these times when we don't really meet our customers as much, has been even more important to understand how we should deliver this value to the customers and what type of mutual relationship that we can set up that is something that is successful for both of us. And all of these things are things that generate some kind of revenue. So on the other hand of the business model, we have all the internal processes. I mean, those are usually easier to control, but they are just as important, especially when we discuss digital transformation. We discuss the activity and the resources that are needed to actually create this intended value. And I mean, foremost, what are we good at? What should we do internally? And what kind of strategic partnership should we set up to both cope with changes, but also to utilize our internal resources most efficiently? So finally, kind of cost structure that both align with your revenue models, but also support the actual value creation process. That, I think that's is something that is of essence. And I mean, this might sound a little bit big, especially if you're in like a startup stage, but I think all these faster and leaner models, for example, the lean canvas, design process, and so on, I mean, these are constructed to cut corners and to get yourself some understanding of the market and balance between the time to market and also your chance to success. However, my experience is that to be able to cut the corners, you need to understand how to cheat. And I mean, how to cheat really well, you need to have experience. So understand the full process is something that is really important when we talk about business models. And hopefully it's something we can discuss in the future.
Great. I think how to cheat is the new mantra. So I think, yeah. Thanks for that. And I think in the right spirit, I can clearly connect this with the whole growth hacking and all those concepts where I think it's taken in a positive way, where the business models have to be agile and responsive to the actual developments around us. And then how do I kind of build through that? In the same kind of continuation, Nikhil, it's, again, we have heard this term so often that data is the new oil. Recently, I heard about data being the new soil now, because oil was taking it to a very industrial kind of era, whereas what we need today is a very holistic view of data, and how do I really use it to nurture new ideas and new businesses and other possibilities. So how do you see this whole piece connecting up with, say, the digital transformation, the business model part, and now we bring in the piece of data into it?
Absolutely. And Hal, thank you again for having me on this very esteemed panel. You said it very right, Harshit sir. This is a very new era that we evolve into. Data, which is really another name for processed information, is key to decision making. As in fact, I will take it further. It's like oxygen to life.
Oh wow!
without that, you can't exist, right? I mean, when we look at around us, the different sources of data that are coming at us and that is constantly capturing this information, if you may, is so many, right? I mean, it's data that we see in media, data that we see when we are doing financial transactions, data that we are seeing if you are going to hospital. About those some examples later, but it's used as a source to make decisions at all points of business. For example, I mean, for continuing the theme that Nilesh sir was talking about, for mobile phone manufactured in India, data regarding its usage, right, its failure rates, battery consumption, etc., will help the manufacturer improve the product substantially. So you have information that is captured from a product standpoint, how is the product functioning in the market? So that will give you a positive reinforcement back to the manufacturer to know what to change, what to improve, and so on. At the same time, how is this information, how is the mobile being purchased by the consumer? How are they buying it? What are the buying patterns? Where are the transactions most popular? What kind of deals make most sense? Will help a dealership decide the marketing and promotional offers to improve the sales performance. So you see the same object in question, a mobile phone, from different aspects in the manufacturing and product standpoint, as well as from a marketing standpoint, can have a very different impact. And I'm not even talking about the consumer, which is us, as to how do we use that information. Don't get me going. I have young kids who are starting to use mobile phones, and trust me, I'm trying to keep them away as much as I can.
No. I think that's very valid point here. And again, as you rightly said, it's so much of it, and hence it becomes even more important that we should be equipped and enabled to use data in the right way, because it's piling up like anything from so many sources. So unless we have the right tools and mindsets to deal with that data, I think it becomes very difficult to take the next steps. Moving on, sir, I think there are few interesting references in the example, Nilesh sir, that you started with, or even what Nikhil sir just mentioned. The whole impact of culture, because the technologies that we know are like technologies, they are neutral, but their adoption is primarily driven by both the consumer needs, which in turn is dependent on how the socio-cultural fabric of a particular user group is. So do you see, and since you have worked across geographies and across cultures, what is your take on that, sir?
Yeah, so I think rightly said, everywhere we will come across this cultural dimension. And since I think last 1 year, it has been discussed quite a lot, specifically from the manufacturing sector, where I have been also part of the CII IT panel as a convener, and they were impacted quite a lot, at least the first 3 months, because almost all of the staff used to go to factory, and there is a lot of the supervisory command kind of a structure, more hierarchical, which is required to carry out certain functions is required. Now, suddenly everyone has gone into a more digital mode after March actually, and they started performing the similar kind of operations with the minimal amount of staff on the floor. And this was a completely different leadership style. The culture was completely changed because the instructions were passed on using the digital media and the observations were done. So I think it's what I want to highlight is the cultural dimension is a long haul process. It will not happen in a day's time, and it will not happen in a month's time also. So it is a recurring process. It takes time. It is a continuous process also, and it has to happen in that way. So, and it is very important when you talk about digital transformation or innovation, because the crux of the whole innovation is actually your culture and what is the DNA of the organization, individuals you are trying to build. And there are many examples. Actually, I was fortunate to work in US subcontinent, as well as now in last 10 years with Nordics, and then obviously in India also. And everyone has a very different but the same look out when it comes to the cultural dimension, and everyone thinks that this is a very important piece of how we can structure the organization, we can do the communications to the employees, and more inclusivity is something which is what everyone is caring. I will say that Nordics are more ahead when it comes to openly talking and highlighting this as a very important aspect when it comes to what does inclusivity mean. I mean, if you are having 100 people team, and whether everyone is having a similar kind of access to the management, whether everyone is having the courage to ask the right kind of a question, or any question for that matter, forget about right or wrong about it, then where they empowered enough to take the decisions which is required into their own areas. And these are very small things, but unless you demonstrating, showcasing, and cultivating this in the organization, it's very difficult for other people to follow and cascade, and it takes time. But if you don't do it, then whatever digital transformation or innovation organizations wants to pursue from their strategy or from the overall mission or statement, I think those are all futile attempts, because if your team and individuals are not supporting, it becomes a little bit impossible mission for anyone to implement this kind of thing. So I have seen that I think a lot of cases when I am interacting with customers in any continent actually are mostly one beyond just the pricing point, the cultural dimension or the promises, the trust what you can build and what your team demonstrate more than just your salesperson at the front actually is. And that is the culture which only can be demonstrated, and it needs to be built in that way. You cannot actually have a Q&A kind of thing where the culture can be built and it needs to be demonstrated. So I consider culture as the highest level, or at least at the equal level. It needs to be integral part of your strategy, and it needs to be integral part of your way of working. And mostly I think this culture and innovation, if you bring together, then I also define actually innovation is mostly simplification of a lot of things and bringing out the positive impact mostly. And if you combine culture and innovation, then simplifying the way of life could be the way how we should drive the business, we should serve the customer, as well as we should I collaborate with the individuals. And that is what I can define the cultural dimensions. And I think there is a lot more to talk about when we are into the remote world, but it's highly important and integral to every organization, even more now.
Thank you, sir. I think that's nicely connecting both the streams of how culture and innovation are kind of connected, because as you rightly said, without that, rest everything may not be that efficient and that effective. Every other initiative may just fall because the right culture didn't exist. So Professor Thomas, how do you see this from a business model innovation perspective? Means, are there any specific cases, or could you kind of name few innovative organizations that they have used some of these elements to really build a innovative business or create a innovation which is out there in the market?
Of course, I mean, I would say that most successful companies today, they work with providing some kind of high customer value. I mean, understanding the customer has become a key ingredient for a successful business today. And I mean, me myself, I work with teaching students interaction design and interaction technology, and understanding the actual user is so important. And that's also important when you build a business model. And even though, I mean, all companies, they work with even the building blocks that I mentioned earlier. I mean, most companies work with similar building blocks or these building blocks, because even though we have different models, we still have the same reality that we're talking about. And I would say that some of the businesses, I mean, all the traditional shops that have moved into online retailing, I mean, these are great examples to how to restructure your business to meet all these changing demands from the customers and the changing needs. I mean, however, you can also see the hard part about this during the COVID restrictions nowadays, that for ordinary shops and restaurants downtown, I mean, since their business model today is so clearly linked to their physical store, because that's actually how they make their money, it has been increasingly hard to enter the online market for those. So the ones that haven't entered the online market previously, it's been really hard to do it now when people just walked away from the stores. But otherwise, one of my favorite examples is probably the Danish toy company Lego, that is a very famous company worldwide nowadays. I mean, they've been growing up until in the beginning of the 90s. They were expanding and emerging as a company. Then steadily for about 10 years, they were declining a lot. And about 20 years ago, they were almost into bankruptcy. But they decided that they realized that they needed to transform their business. So they started to do that, and they started to understand the needs and how to reach out to their users, I mean the kids. And where are the kids? They realized that the kids were more online. They were more they weren't really in the physical stores anymore. So this made Lego restructure and move into movies, mobile games, apps, and so on. And this later on created a need for their toys. I mean, the toys that they actually want to sell.
Okay.
So even though they make a lot of revenues from all these other businesses, still the toys is an important part. And I mean, this has made Lego actually into the world's largest toy company today, with revenues over $5 billion US, I think. But otherwise, I mean, you can always move back to probably the most to the company that is the expert of understanding customer and continuously delivering high customer value, and keeping the cost of technology to a minimum at the same time. So that is, of course, Apple. I mean, every new technology that they introduce in their phones or in any of their physical products, they always accompany this with some kind of service that both benefit Apple and their customers. For example, when they introduced the RFID that Samsung had for a long time in their phone, they also introduced Apple Pay. So they always introduce some kind of extra service to this, of course, to make money, but also to create some kind of customer value. So I think that to be able to not only create the value, but also to capture the value as a company, that might be the hardest part. But you can see, I mean, these are big companies, these are famous examples, but you can also see the small companies today that create all these both external, internal values, all the startups where they give shares to their employees, so they want to continue working with this, but at the same time as they also actually trying to reach out with a high customer value. We have so many of these small IT businesses in my hometown that also they deliver both the value internally and externally.
Very interesting. I think they are the two top names that anybody can think of when it comes to innovation of all kinds, not only the technology, but the whole customer-led innovation, finding out the insights and building on that to build the new products and services. Nikhil sir, it's fairly easy to assume that, yeah, means there is a data stream that will keep constantly flowing from the customer side, the marketing data, the usage data. But full-fledged business, do we need to also consider some other kinds of data apart from the customer data for any other purpose or any other decision making, or how does that kind of aid or contribute to innovation in some other way?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. And if you look at data, we talked about this earlier, it's the rawest form, right? So there is a very common continuum that we talk about. It's called a DIKW continuum, or data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, right? Yeah. So if you look at it, the foundational source is data that comes through. Now, if you look at financial data, it's absolutely important and critical. If you're following some of the news in the US stock markets, recently, the recent controversy that in trading stock of certain companies like GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond, and AMC created a ruckus on the market, right? So it tells you that there's a drama and a story behind the scene that was purely driven by data and the immediate reaction it has on people and the constant feedback loop. So different types of information that is collected, different types of sources of data is leading to this frenzy and causing this effect, right, on people. Some of this is not necessarily the healthiest form, but where we live here in Chicago and in America, it's capitalism at its rawest form. At the same time, you see when you go to hospitals, we look at factories, manufacturing, transportation systems, all of the real-time decisions now that are being taken are because of the data that is being sourced. Complex measurement systems, for example, in an ICU, constantly measure the health of a patient and allow doctors to make timely and informed decisions. You have sensors in a factory that are telling you constantly how a particular product is being manufactured. Should I change, the way I'm manufacturing? Where do I need raw material more? Do I need to change the heat? Do I need to, increase processing time? All of that information is being relayed automatically, and the decisions are being made real time because of information connected there. We have, the world of IoT around us today, where the data is being collected through multiple sources, whether it be video, cameras, it could be, other sensors, temperature, humidity, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different types of data that is being constantly consumed, right, by our systems. Another one that we are now seeing and kind of becoming also controversial is the location data that is being captured in our mobile phones today. So there is a lot of information that is there, which is related to where people were, what are they doing, how are they moving, and this, in fact, information is critical for our law enforcement agencies to trace criminal activity, right, and help prevention. So as you look at it, the gamut is everywhere. And I think the more and more we realize it, it's around us, right? Data is like omnipresent around us in all different shapes and forms.
Fantastic. No, I think that's something which we all need to make a note of, because otherwise, many times data itself is kind of taken in a very reductionist way, saying that okay, it's only specific type of data. But this perspective also helps. Nilesh sir, I think we'll come to the main and the most what I would say exciting term, where I think it is the integration of all that we are speaking about, because at the end this is all towards having the right customer experience. So and as we know that the customer may not care about what all you are doing in the back end, or what technology you are using, or what innovation you are doing in the back end. At the end, that it's a job to be done for them. So how do you see this whole piece of customer experience? Do you feel that that's the kind of an integrator which ties everything together, or is there some other angle to it?
I think yes, customer experience is something which I think connects everyone together. But like I said at the very beginning, also there is nowadays customer also looks out for that. How does and what kind of an impact their decisions and what solutions organizations are providing on the larger societal as well as individuals also.
True.
And I think specifically I have seen that the more and more I have been working with the manufacturing sectors, and the more and more the clean tech things what we are talking about, I think I have seen also that the decisions are 100% influenced on the larger aspects than just impact on that business, although the proposals were really good made. So I think there is enormous amount of focus on building a very holistic sustainable solutions nowadays with every corporation, keeping the customer as a center, but customer also cares that your providers also takes care of equal value system around you. So saying that, I think it is nowadays for all the providers even more important that they understand the customer's customer and keep on doing that. And it keeps on a very interesting journey of what kind of a business models will come into picture when you start interacting with customer, what kind of a data which all these things are keep on generating, and what is the value chain ultimately we are trying to build around it. So it's not only the customer where you deliver your solution you need to understand nowadays, but you need to understand and keep on constantly shifting left towards their customers. And this is very interesting journey when we will talk about in my experiences also, whenever I am considering a customer, we conduct and do some kind of a framework and analyze that if we are providing one use case or one customer connection or one interaction with the customer, how many processes and decisions we are having inside the organizations to provide something to the customer. And I have seen that I think if there are, let's say, a hypothesis of you are having 5 times your people or your process or your delivery is going to the customer, I think 95% of the time your internal organization processes, decision making, and all those things which are actually taking a lot of energy into the organization, it is required. But our focus when it comes to moving all this energy resources, what internal organization decision making is required, is actually, if we can say that it moves from 5 to 10% facing the customers, engaging customers, giving them 360-degree views, giving them accessibility to a different type of data, different type of decision-making systems, then actually we are constantly evolving and also showcasing the customer that I think we do care, we do keep on what is happening in the market. And this is where the framework or the process can be built where we focus on the moment of truth, where the every process in the organizations needs to ultimately, with the minimalistic amount of effort inside the organization, is interacting with the end customer. And if this starts happening, and you start optimizing your internal structures, organizations, a lot of automation will also come into the picture. And a lot of, I have seen that in the boardrooms, discussions happens, because ultimately we are talking about the big management layer in between, and trying to make them more efficient, optimized in the way how the data can be dealt with. But it's possible, it has been happening. A lot of small players are very fast into moving into that direction and producing these kind of results. The bigger enterprise are actually waking up and also trying to implement it. So very interesting things which is possible with data, business models impacting the positively on the customers. Excuse me.
Great. Professor Thomas, I have a very pointed question for you. We all understand that what all is important, but how do you really teach this to somebody? Since you have been running programs, and you have been coaching people on some of these topics. So how do you really take these bigger complex topics and really help people learn the tips and tricks of the trade?
Nowadays there are great models today. I mean, we've been researching about business models for over 20 years. They've been around for much longer than that. But what we call the business model thinking that we have today is pretty much 20 years old. And I think it's important, like I said before, I think it's important to be able to cut corners, to cheat, and to do the bare minimum when you are in a tight schedule, you have problems, you want to launch, you have lack of money, everything. If you know how to do it correctly, you know how to cheat better. I believe that using these kind of models, like the business model canvas is probably the most famous one today. I came across it when I actually read the thesis of Osterwalder way before he published his book, and I found it a little rough at the time, but nowadays it's been refined. It's really good. It has all of these building blocks that actually you can see, you can analyze yourself. I've been working with some smaller companies within the printing industry in Sweden many years ago, and then we sat down and had a sitting, and they were just talking about their business, and after some time I realized that they were just talking about the internal processes. Never not anything about customer value and so on. And what we try to do during these courses, and when we have these seminars with them, we try to get them to talk in terms of customer value, and not in terms of on what kind of printing equipment do I have back home. So I believe that is a really good model. And then later on you can move really quickly into these lean canvas, the NABC model that Stanford uses. These are just mostly to get a grasp and to more or less evaluate ideas. But when you try to build business models, I think that these, like business model canvas, is pretty much the best way to go today.
Great. Thanks, and this kind of support, because here at our at the institute we are also using the BMC and the other variants of it very exhaustively. And as you rightly said, I think it really short circuits the whole process and kind of just speeds up the whole ideation and the model building part of it. So I think Oswalder has done a great job for all of us. Nikhil sir, I would ask again the same question. Probably this will be the last question, and then we can move on to the audience if they have any questions for us. But same thing, that when it comes to data, which is otherwise so technical, and I've heard that it requires a lot of maths and science and all of that in the back end of it for somebody to really learn how to deal with data. So how do you see that if because what we also know is that probably people who are trained in data science or related AI, ML, and all these techniques, uh, they they are the probably most sought after people in industry, right? That's something which, like, there is a huge demand. But how does somebody really develop this as a skill set and goes about learning anything related to data in this new context?
Yeah, no, it's great question. And, it starts from, first of all, appreciating the complexity that this provides, right? How is data organized? How is data, available to us to consume? And then there is the science behind it, right? We talk about big data, and the common misconception, or at least the common thinking, is big data is big data because it consumes a lot of data. I mean, it's nothing to do with the volume. In fact, it's more about, to your point, right, the constant stream of data that is coming in, but also about real-time decision making, right, and the ability to, understand the different elements that connect one point of data to the other, right, and how do you form a pattern? How do you form a way that, of insight coming out from the information, which really is important. So understanding, you can start with basic math. I mean, you can start with basic, techniques to get to that point. And then as the amount of data and as the different sources start getting more and more, as you look at, a larger expanse of time than just looking at, 2 days or 4 days, and you look at the years altogether, it's when this gets complex and you need to have, sophisticated computing machinery, which allows you to connect these dots together. So it's really connecting dots in the simplistic form that ultimately are a part of this science, if you may, behind it, right? How do you start it? I think that's the question. You start by understanding, there are some basic algorithms that you need to know. You can start from fundamentals like statistics, right? You need to understand how these different points, and we have all learned this, in some of our basic education. So there are various stages that you can apply, right, or different techniques you can apply to the data around you to make sense. Now, when it gets to more complex types of data, whether it is, we talked about medical data and so on and so forth, you need some more knowledge that you can apply alongside domain knowledge or industry knowledge that you can apply to the sort of fundamental layer of just the data sources coming in to make sense out of it in your context. So understanding and having that domain knowledge certainly helps a lot in able to translate that information back. So fundamental understanding of maths, maybe a little bit of statistics, and then applying that in the business context to yield the right information knowledge from it, I would say.
Very interesting. You used two very interesting words, connecting the dots and pattern making. I think these are two qualifiers for a creative profession. So in that sense, data and dealing with data is also a very highly creative activity and not only about the kind of tools and techniques. So I think
absolutely. Yep. Maths is creative. It's
fun. True. Cool. So thank you everyone, and I think it was a fantastic. At least I could see a thread running through all the three topics that we were discussing, and I think that's the whole idea, that if with this thought process and the thoughts that we just exchanged, Nilesh sir, if you could just share some light on how are we kind of rolling out the programs, and how do kind of one goes about learning this thing in this new online world. So if you could just help us understand the structure and what's ahead for the participants, and we can take it from there. Yeah?
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm a little bit having a bad throat, but I just got a feedback on the chat that I think my mic needs to be corrected. So please tell me, and I can shift to the another mic also if this is not correct. Yeah, but yeah, so I think when it comes to this particular theme of accelerating digital innovation, I think we have been working on orchestrating this for about 6 months now, and there has been a lot of topics which has been discussed. There has been some topics which are lined up, and we picked up the first three in this discussion, which we are talking about the customer experience and innovation agility. We are talking about the data-driven decisions and the business models, what is required. And these are also very key topics. And you can see that during this whole 50 minutes, these are actually, there is a lot of convergence which is happening, moving from the business models to data and what kind of experience which will create to the customer. And also the way how we are shaping up this whole whole, I will not say the course, but whole theme actually is there are different people from different continents bringing on a variety of examples. So I think there are people like Thomas coming from Nordics, and you have already seen 2 examples. He has taken Lego. I could remember that, which is an excellent example. And then Nikhil is coming from USA, and he has already covered some of the big enterprises examples that how the healthcare and financial sectors has been improving. And then I'm also pitching in more from working in these territories, and now now from India, and taking out examples. So the focus is also of the whole theme is to have an experiential learning, because my personal candid response or takeaway is that I think there are many courses, excellent opportunities for people to learn online, but there is I will say a feedback that it needs to be more engaging, more experiential, rather than we just focus on the on-demand kind of learning. And this is the platform and the promotion what we are doing, first of all, to bring different examples or set of examples, different people from industry, academia, and research coming together, keeping everything live and more engaging when it comes to how the sessions will be conducted now during this program, and also having a more I will say interactive kind of a modules, rather than just walking through you, because ultimately all these executives who are and who will be attending this kind of programs will be interested. My personal experience is also that it feels good when you are attending those 4 or 5 days in those sessions, but after that it's very difficult to implement immediately those things. And our focus during these sessions what we will be conducting is actually making sure that you are able to implement as soon as possible whatever topics we are discussing. And it's not about rocket science, it's about our own experience, what we have been learning and doing. So it should be easy, because if you take examples of nothing wrong in it, but Tesla or Amazon or I think all the time, then it's very difficult for people to correlate, although it feels good. Yeah. And ultimately it needs to be super innovation which is happening there. But on the ground level also we have to take some stock of situation, and that is what I think this experience of Nikhil and Thomas and we will try to bring to the table, and to keep it more experiential learning, because that's what the feedback I have attending many of such executive programs.
Great. Thank you, sir. Thanks for this overall structure and the approach that we are taking for learning. I have a question here from, I can't see the name here, but they are asking about when does this start and all of that. So do we share that here, or maybe we can take it offline with them separately? But if you could just indicate when the audience can expect to start some of these courses.
I think it is your call, Harshit sir, but
yeah.
so you can respond. We are ready when it comes to our team as well as with our contents and
perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think roughly in or April, May is what we are planning, and yeah, we'll get back to you offline with the details once the things are scheduled at our end. Yeah. Cool. Yes.
For more questions, to reach out to us offline on LinkedIn. Special thanks to our innovators for their time and sharing value-add takeaways from their innovation journey. We recognize the need to reach out to thousands of aspiring innovators and help them gain the skills and knowledge required for their dreams to become a reality. We encourage you to connect with us via our social channels. For those interested in becoming top-notch innovators, we invite you to explore our courses that will fast-track your career path. So log on to www.mitidinnovation.com to kickstart your innovation journey with MITID Innovation. Let's learn, innovate, lead. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining in. Yours innovatively, Priya Dhawan signing off. To everyone, stay connected, stay safe, and keep innovating every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you. Good day,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
See ya.